Guilty verdicts in the biggest case of corporate fraud in history. 38 counts of fraud and conspiracy.
Lawyers for Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay threw around complicated notions about margin calls and short selling.
We fought the good fight, and some things work, some things don't.
Billions stolen, markets rattled. Ordinary people are left holding the bag. These weren't stick-ups in back alleys. They were engineered in skyscrapers, boardrooms, and innovative startups. The masterminds wore suits, gave TED Talks, and landed magazine covers. For years, they fooled investors, regulators, and even their own employees. And by the time the truth came out, the money was gone and the damage was done. From Enron's hidden debt to FTX's crypto collapse, the schemes change, but the playbook stays the same. If you know the warning signs, you can spot the next one before it takes you down. Financial crime isn't just about greed. It's about control, manipulation, and exploiting systems that should protect the rest of us. The biggest scandals in history weren't committed in the shadows. They happened in plain sight, wrapped in press releases and shareholder reports. Each case we're about to cover shows how a mix of ambition, arrogance, and oversight failure can devastate entire economies. We're going to look at 6 infamous cases. You'll see how the fraud worked, why it lasted so long, and the lesson each one leaves behind. Because these crimes are still happening, only the packaging has changed. Chapter 1. Enron, the illusion of infinite growth.
All right, time now for a look back at this day in history, December 2nd, 2001. That was the day Enron Corp filed for what at the time was the largest ever corporate bankruptcy.
In the late 1990s, Enron was the golden child of corporate America. They weren't just an energy company, they were a Wall Street darling, promising to change the way the world does business. They traded electricity like stocks, speculated on broadband, and even dabbled in weather derivatives. Investors believed they were unstoppable. Behind the curtain, Enron was burning cash, but thanks to mark-to-market accounting, they could book estimated future profits as if the money was already in the bank the moment a deal was signed, even if it would lose money later. Enron recorded the entire projected profit that day. Losses? They shoved them into off-the-books shell companies called special purpose entities with cryptic names like Chuco and Raptor. Executives, including CEO Jeff Skilling and Chairman Ken Lay, sold millions in stock while telling employees to keep buying. The company's share price hit $90, and the media hailed them as corporate visionaries. Wall Street analysts didn't dare question the numbers. They either didn't understand them or didn't want to. In 2001, whistleblowers and investigative journalists exposed the truth. Within weeks, Enron went from a $74 billion market cap to bankruptcy. Over 20,000 employees lost their jobs, and retirement accounts were wiped out overnight. Skilling went to prison. Lay died before sentencing. The lesson here is that when a company's finances are so complicated that no one outside its inner circle can explain them clearly, you're not looking at brilliance, you're looking at a smokescreen. Complexity is the perfect camouflage for fraud, and Enron wrote the playbook. Chapter 2. Bernie Madoff, the trust game.
Fixture on Wall Street, Bernie Madoff, 70 years old, arrested by the FBI.
Bernie Madoff wasn't a fringe con artist. He was a Wall Street legend, former NASDAQ chairman, philanthropist, and a man trusted by the financial elite. His hedge fund promised steady returns of 10 to 12% a year, rain or shine. No big swings, no wild risks, just smart investing. It was all a lie. Madoff ran the largest Ponzi scheme in history, worth an estimated $65 billion on paper. He never invested a dime. Instead, he used money from new investors to pay returns to earlier ones, keeping the illusion alive. Statements were fabricated, trades were invented, and audits were meaningless because they came from a tiny, complicit accounting firm. For decades, he avoided detection because the scheme thrived on exclusivity. Not everyone could get in, which made wealthy clients want in even more. This aura of scarcity built loyalty and discouraged questions. Even when analysts flagged red flags, like returns that didn't match market trends, the SEC repeatedly failed to act. The 2008 financial crisis broke the spell. Investors demanded withdrawals, and Madoff didn't have the cash. He confessed to his sons, who turned him in. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison. The lesson here is that if an investment's returns are eerily consistent, no matter what the market is doing, that's not a sign of genius. It's a sign something's wrong. In finance, too good to be true isn't a cliche. It's a warning label. Chapter 3. Wells Fargo, culture as a weapon.
In the meantime, minutes from the July meeting of the Federal Reserve reflecting a rather divided central bank, one that is worried about tariffs and inflation, And another one also worried about jobs.
For over a century, Wells Fargo was one of America's most trusted banks. That reputation made its 2016 scandal all the more shocking. The fraud didn't come from rogue traders or a single corrupt executive. It came from the culture itself and customers' names. Some even moved money between accounts without permission to hit targets. The system rewarded those who met quotas, no matter the method, and punished those who fell short. Many employees went along out of fear of losing their jobs. The scheme went on for years, and because the fraudulent accounts often had no activity, customers didn't always notice. When the scandal finally broke, it wasn't just about the fake accounts. It was about a corporate culture where hitting the numbers mattered more than doing what was right. The fallout was brutal. $3 billion in fines and settlements, a CEO forced to resign, and a permanent stain on the bank's name. Even today, Wells Fargo is still rebuilding trust. The lesson here is that corruption doesn't always start with a lie on a balance sheet. Sometimes it starts with unrealistic goals that push good people into bad behavior. When leadership values growth over ethics, fraud becomes inevitable. Chapter 4, 2008, Mortgage Crisis, Legal Corruption.
Homeowners have been waiting for a landmark settlement against one of the nation's largest banks for its part in the 2008 financial crisis. Citibank agreeing to pay a $7 billion fine for its role in the housing market crash.
The 2008 financial crisis wasn't just an economic disaster. It was the largest legalized swindle in modern history. The housing market was booming, and Wall Street couldn't get enough of mortgage-backed securities. Banks pushed risky subprime loans on people who couldn't afford them, often with deceptive terms that guaranteed default down the road. Here's where it gets darker. These toxic loans weren't hidden. They were bundled together, sliced into tranches, and sold as safe investments to pension funds, municipalities, and global investors. The ratings agencies, who were supposed to protect investors, stamped them with AAA ratings, knowing they were junk. The system was rigged for short-term profit. Lenders made money writing bad loans. Banks made money packaging them. Investors bought the illusion of safety. When homeowners inevitably defaulted, the whole structure collapsed, triggering the Great Recession. Millions lost their homes, trillions in wealth evaporated, and unemployment spiked worldwide. Yet very few at the top faced real consequences. Most fines were paid by corporations, not individuals. The lesson here is that just because something is legal doesn't make it honest. Systemic fraud often hides in plain sight, dressed up as innovation and protected by regulatory blind spots. In 2008, legality was the perfect cover for theft on a global scale. Chapter 5, FTX, the New Wild West.
We are starting to see more collateral damage from the high-profile blow-up of FTX, the latest overnight. BlockFi, a company that Sam Bankman-Fried had agreed to bail out earlier this year.
FTX wasn't just another crypto exchange. It was the face of the industry's future. Founded by Sam Bankman-Fried, a math prodigy with messy hair and an image of scruffy genius, FTX promised transparency, security, and innovation. Celebrities endorsed it, venture capitalists poured in billions, and politicians welcomed its donations. But behind the branding, FTX was a house of cards. Bankman-Fried was secretly funneling customer deposits, billions of dollars, to his private trading firm, Alameda Research. Alameda used the money for risky bets, political donations, and luxury real estate. When crypto markets dipped in 2022, the gap between what FTX owed and what it had became impossible to hide. A leaked balance sheet showed billions in liabilities, backed by assets of questionable value. Within days, customers rushed to withdraw funds. FTX froze withdrawals, filed for bankruptcy, and revealed an $8 billion shortfall. The collapse rocked the crypto world, wiping out life savings for thousands of retail investors and deepening skepticism about digital assets. Bankman-Fried was later arrested and charged with fraud, money laundering, and campaign finance violations. The lesson here is that in unregulated markets, trust is the only collateral, and it's fragile. Without transparency, flashy marketing and high-profile endorsements aren't signs of strength. They're often distractions from the truth. Chapter 6, Theranos, the Science of Deception.
5:22. Today, Elizabeth Holmes will begin serving an 11-year prison sentence. The Theranos founder is headed to a minimum security prison in Texas after she was convicted for her fraudulent claims about revolutionizing.
Theranos was the Silicon Valley fairy tale investors dreamed of. Founded by Elizabeth Holmes at just 19, the company claimed it could run hundreds of medical tests from a single drop of blood. It promised to revolutionize healthcare, make diagnostics faster, cheaper, and more accessible, and in doing so, save lives. Investors lined up, pouring in hundreds of millions. The media crowned Holmes the next Steve Jobs. Walgreens and Safeway struck deals to put Theranos devices in stores. The pitch was flawless, except the technology didn't work. Behind the scenes, Theranos was running most tests on traditional machines bought from other companies, not its own Edison device. Results were unreliable, sometimes dangerously wrong. Yet Holmes and her COO, Sunny Balwani, kept up the illusion with carefully staged demos, tight control over employees, and aggressive legal threats against whistleblowers. The house of cards collapsed in 2015 when the Wall Street Journal published an expose revealing the truth. Regulators shut down Theranos labs, partnerships dissolved, and criminal charges followed. Holmes was convicted of fraud in 2022 and sentenced to over 11 years in prison. The lesson here is that in science, as in finance, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary proof. When a company refuses transparency and hides behind secrecy, it's not protecting trade secrets, it's protecting a lie. Look at these 6 scandals, and you'll see the same DNA in all of them. Complexity used as camouflage, a lack of transparency, a charismatic figurehead who inspired trust right up until the collapse. Whether it's an energy giant, a bank, a startup, or a crypto exchange, fraud thrives when no one asks hard questions. The lesson isn't just to be skeptical, it's to demand proof. Numbers that can be verified, technology that can be tested, leaders who can answer direct questions without jargon, because the next big scandal, it's already out there. Thanks for joining us today at Due Process Daily. Throw us a like and consider subscribing to the channel to help us grow.